When we started each of these episodes, we weren't sure exactly what the parents would bring nor the questions they would ask about their children. As it turns out, each one brings something that is unique and very special. In today's episode, we're going to meet a mother who has some concerns about her daughter, who apparently has some issues in regarding her peers and the effect of the peers on her and her relationship with her parents. Please listen and see if you can identify some solutions for you if you're in the same situation. Hello, we're meeting again in the episode of the Parents and Teens, and I'm meeting with the mother who is here to talk about her 14-year-old daughter. Welcome.
Thank you.
Would you take whatever time you'd like and describe you, your family, and your daughter, and give the audience a little bit of background about her and about you and the family?
Sure. We are a traditional family of a mom and a dad. There's 3 siblings. There's a 17-year-old male, then a 14-year-old female, and then a 12-year-old boy. We are an active outdoor family. We do a lot of activities together as a family and individually. We are a religious family. We come from a normal background, I think, from both sides of our family. Yeah.
Well, that's
good. Kind of us.
No, thank you very much. Now, you apparently have some concerns about this girl. Would you tell us what they are? And then after doing that, if you have questions to ask about it, please feel free to do so.
Okay, well, I'll just kind of go down just a basic list of the different aspects. Physically, she is active. She's involved in equestrian sports. And so that takes up, several hours each day. And so she's physically active. We do a lot of things as a family. We think that's important. Mentally, she never feels like she is good enough. She's always trying to find the new thing to do to fill her time. She's never content. So then she never feels like she's good enough because she's always trying to start something new, which I think is really hard mentally because she's always trying to start something and not stick with something. Yeah.
So one of your main concerns then is the fact that she seems like she's unable to feel adequate or confident or secure.
Absolutely, which then affects all the other aspects of her life.
Okay, is there much, can I ask you a couple of questions?
Sure.
How are her friendships with her peers? What's her relationship like with members of the family and so on? Could you take a minute and describe that, please?
Socially, she has a lot of friends, but she's always in a new friend group. So if she is done with one friend group, her personality is fun and bubbly, and she always knows what to say and what to do to have another group of friends. So she's constantly rotating her friend group, and then that goes into her mental state because she never has really strong connections because she has so many people she's trying to fit in with. She's super outgoing and a really good friend from what I can see and what I hear, just from what other people say. She's great with adults. But she's never just content with one group of friends, which I think is really hard socially.
Okay, and this bothers you apparently because it's not consistent or stable, or how do you know that she doesn't feel confident about herself, or is she often discouraged or unsatisfied in some way, and does she talk about it?
Well, she'll come home from certain groups of friends. So we'll kind of step back. We have a very open relationship with all of our kids. Like, they know they can come and talk to us. Her older brother has had lots of different issues that we've been able to work through together and as a family. So we have a really good communication, but anytime she comes home from certain groups of friends, she'll close down and she won't even talk. And so then I feel like there could have been something that happened that she's not willing to talk to me about. And then she doesn't hang out with that group for a period of time. And then she'll go to another group of friends. So my concern is that like just that loss of connection and always trying to find the new.
Is she, are these friends, are their values consistent with yours and your family's, do you think?
The group that she goes to when she closes down is the group that I know gets into a lot of trouble at school. I've seen the things that they have done, and I've heard of the things that they have done, not just rumors, but actual facts. And I know that they get into a lot of trouble.
What kind?
Drugs, well, I should specify weed or vaping. I know a lot of them are sexually active because I've heard of a girl being pregnant. I know that they have dropped out of school. So those are the type of things that I know that are happening in this certain group.
Does your relationship allow you to be asked direct questions?
Yep, absolutely. We ask the direct questions.
So you think that if she was, say, experimenting sexually or with some controlled substance, that she would tell you?
Yes, she has told me. She has vaped several times, not consistently. She has experimented with weed twice, and did not like the feeling. And we have worked with her through those trials and the temptation and given her tools to work with that. And as far as I know, it hasn't happened for over a year. But then she's shutting down again. So I'm thinking she's back into these same habits, but now she won't talk to us, which is a concern.
Yeah. Is she, what is she an early developer? That is her body developed and mature?
Yes. Yep. Absolutely. She's been an early developer.
Okay. And are there any boys that call frequently or hang around the house or stand around outside and want to talk and spend time with her?
No, not to our knowledge. So there's not to our knowledge.
Okay, now I know you have some questions. Now would be a good time if you want to ask them.
So I guess so anytime we have consequences for choices, and those are known, they're not unknown consequence. It's like we have talked to them, if this happens, this will be your consequence, and this is what will happen in our home, and so they're not unknown consequences. So when something happens, for instance, just this last weekend, my husband and I had movie tickets with some friends, and she didn't have her grades up. So we made her stay home. She couldn't go out that weekend, but my husband and I left. And on our way to the movies, she called and said, I'm going to leave and I want to kill myself. I don't want to be home. So we as parents, of course, came home to be with her because that was frustrating. But these are the things that happens all the time. Anytime we give a consequence for something that she's done that she knows it shouldn't have happened, she always throws those type of things. You hate me. You don't love me. You're leaving me. This is your fault. So then we can't go and enjoy being together as a husband and wife.
Okay, your question then is how to interpret that?
Yes. What do I do? It's always about her when she wants us. And if she does something wrong, it's always someone else's fault. Or she plays the victim, which then she feels like she deserves to have everything. And we don't know what to do.
All right, without knowing a whole lot more, let me just make 2 or 3 observations, okay?
Perfect.
When a child is out and they're anything having to do with the reward or pleasure center of the brain, like chemicals or sex for that matter, when they experiment with that, they often feel lousy afterward. And they feel lousy because it's sort of like the downside. And without knowing any more, I'd suspect that she is more involved in something like that than you currently know. And I'd spend time finding out about that. Second is that if these consequences, for example, are known in advance, and she knows what will happen to her, even though she makes the same choice, and then when you impose it, she goes directly to "I want to die" and so on. That's often the case where the individual is lacking a certain sense of control over themselves. It's like for a young girl in particularly, the issue is meeting the expectations of other people, or seeking for approval, or trying to get something from someone else. And in the process of doing that, in our culture, we often do not have a strategy or a method for helping our daughters formulate a strong sense of taking control of their own lives. And the idea is that if they fit in and they're popular, then that's successful. If they achieve and do well, then that is. But the real success psychologically is for a person of her age to gradually increase the sense of control they have over themselves. And when a person is trying to do that and cannot because of the reward or pleasure center, that's a self-defeating thing. And it goes right directly to, "I don't know if I want to live." And so
that's exactly her. You're describing exactly what I feel, that I'm trying to get her to understand.
So one of my answers would be to see if you have confidence in a mental health professional or somebody who does well with adolescents, and help her sort of separate herself from so much externalization, and see if we can't get her to focus more on herself and her life and taking control of things and being more confident in what she thinks and feels. She may be comparing herself. Here's one of the things that happens with teens. If you worry a lot about what other people think of you, and you think that they think negative things, that goes right directly to your own self-concept, which often is also very negative. Even though a child looks good and sounds good and so on, in those moments, they go right directly to "I'm worthless, I'm not adequate," and so on. And those feelings can be very intense.
Yeah, we have had her. She's at I guess 2 years ago, when she got into some trouble with experimenting with this group of friends that I do not like at all. She volunteered to go to therapy to work out some of these issues, because she said she couldn't talk to us about it. And so she went for 2 months, and then COVID hit and she didn't like doing them online. And so then once COVID ended, she didn't want to go back. And I felt like she was doing better. She was with a better group of friends. Like, I felt like her mental health was better. Like, our relationship was good. But in the last few months, she's been slipping again. And she actually came to us and asked to go back to a therapy, which then I couldn't get her in for like 3 to 4 months. So I ended up getting a life coach. She went a few times. And then she came back and said she doesn't want to go because she doesn't feel like she is getting the advice that she wants.
Well, typically it involves some fairly significant psychological experience. And so the person that she should go and see should be somebody who's fairly well trained in that, and in adolescence, and in the developmental tasks the kids face, to see what she's facing and understand that. But it's also the case that when you get caught, you get into some situation and the reward or the pleasure center of the brain is involved, it's addictive. It has the highly addictive forms of behavior, and the result of participating is this self-loathing or self-inadequacy that follows shortly after that. And it doesn't have to be actual sexual contact, although it might be, and it doesn't have to be a chemical issue specifically. It could be something like this. It could be group pressure, where she's the only one and she's not sure what to say or do. And everybody sort of says, this is what we're doing. And if this group of friends, for example, has a very arbitrary authority person or persons who control the group, then that's a part of what will hinder or hamper her efforts to be free, to feel like she can make her own decisions. And usually a group like that does, and they're not the most obvious ones, but they have some very powerful people in the in-group, and they control, and sometimes feeling controlled produces the same negative result as the use of some of these chemicals, for example.
Yeah. So what do I do when she doesn't want, like the first time I asked, she was willing to go. Second time she came and asked us, it's hard to find people that are able to take you right away. Like you can't wait 2 to 4 months on a waiting list to get into some type of therapist or counselor. And so like I did what I could with when she asked me, because I knew it was important.
Well, I would suggest the following. If she hasn't had a thorough physical exam lately, then take her to your family practitioner or your primary care physician and ask that person to have a thorough physical exam, including blood work to check on hormones and so on. So that'd be one thing.
Okay.
Secondly, I would search for a therapist that will meet with you as a family some of the time.
Yep.
So that your father and mother and this girl, so you can get together and you have a chance in that setting to clearly communicate something about the importance she is to you and so forth. I will bet you that there's a bunch of unthings that are not being described and unfolded by her to you. And I'll bet the distance between the two of you bothers her as well, just like it does you.
Yeah, she's voiced that just last week when we had another big blowout over us telling her she had to stay home because of her grades. She just says, I hate you. I don't love you. And I hate that I can't tell you that I love you. Like she doesn't she's let us know that she doesn't, she'll say, I hate being home. And that's really sad to me that I don't like being home. Sure. So yeah. So yeah, that's valid. She doesn't like that feeling.
Well, you would see, the reason why you would do that is because there are a lot of subtleties in the whole deal here between parents and kids that parents often are not aware of. Yeah. And so sometimes you could be what you think doing is a very good thing and a proper thing, and you're not exactly meshing exactly with her state of mind. And then what happens is that you look more controlling than you actually are, or you look more critical than you intend to be, partly because she's put herself in a bad situation. So that's why it's good to get involved, both parents and her.
Right. Yep. And she knows that we're willing to. We always say, like, if you say you don't love us because we're doing something wrong, then tell us what we're doing wrong so we are able to fix it. But she can't.
Now, she would not be able to tell you.
No.
Yeah, she would just feel it, because most families in this situation are not actually aware of the stuff that goes on between family members. And we just live life, like it appears to us. And we get up every day and do the routine. But a lot of the things that exert influence are I'm going to say subliminal. They're not all that secret, but a trained family practitioner, for example, a family psychologist, would be able to look and see and make some fairly accurate conclusions early on about the tone of voice, on the messages and what you're doing. And he may also suggest that you alter your disciplinary plan. So let me give you a proposal to consider. So instead of imposing a consequence like stay home or restricting a privilege and so on, let's suppose you imposed a consequence of a conversation with you and your husband. And in this conversation with her, you covered three things. You ask her what it is happened or what she's doing or whatever, and you don't interrogate. You just say, I'd like to know what happened in that event, why you were late or what happened. And then you go as far as she'll let you go, but you listen, pay attention without being critical or blaming. Then you move to step two. Step two is, let's take a look at the consequences. And the consequences are not the punishment consequences. They are consequences for her emotionally. So one of the consequences is that she devastates herself, or that she separates herself from her mother and dad, or that you're worried or something else. And you just explore these. You just explore them. And then the third phase is, let's take a look at what we could do better. So that when you take a look at the next situation, you say, how do you want to make that decision or that one? And so every time you run into a situation, the parental consequence to the child is this conversation. And see if removing these punishments will help out.
I love that. And we have tried something similar to that, which we need to go back to. But the issue we've had in the past, which I would love to explore, is she's always blaming others for what happened. It's never her fault. And
so,
anytime,
excuse me for interrupting, but it's
sure.
Okay. See, I know it would violate your sensibilities if she was doing that. We're not asking for a confession from her to begin with, or even the truth. We're just asking her to talk to you. And so you're saying, well, what went on? What did you say? And if she blames everybody and half the school are idiots and, all the other people, you say, okay, we understand that. We got that. Okay. And then you just go on. And you might even say, why do you think that? But see, you wouldn't at this point in time until you were ways down the road actually ever to press the point and say, well, what part did you play in this? Because to begin with, we want her to be responsible, but she's avoiding it and she's defensive around you, which means she has some guilt very likely, and possibly she's a little bit ashamed of what she's been involved with. And so you have to do this gradually until one day there's enough safety for her to say, oh, mama, here's what's been going on. And then when you get to that point, then you can take it to the next step.
Okay. So you're saying when we're having this conversation, I'm listening, just asking what has happened, listening to what she has to say.
And what did you do? Yeah, you say, what did you do? And how did you handle this? Yeah.
Yeah.
And your purpose is just to invite her to talk.
So I'm not giving any consequences. If she has bad grades, I'm not saying, fine, then you're home this weekend, you're not hanging out, because she's going to kind of self-punish herself in the concept of us talking.
That's right. But see, we're not satisfied with the low grades. What you're doing isn't working, however, it's not motivating. So we need to find another method, to help encourage her to study and focus and so on. It comes in the rubric that I just gave you about, let's take a look at what it would mean for you to take charge of your own life. Would it include making your bed? Would it include eating right? Would it include some exercise? Would it include choosing certain kinds of friends? And would it especially include organizing yourself so that your grades are the way you'd like them to be? See, organizing yourself in terms of studying and doing the assignments on the day they're assigned is probably as important as the grade a student gets. And so what you're asking is for her to organize herself and take control. And the reason for doing that is that when a teenager takes control of themselves, they're way less vulnerable to the influence of other people.
Yes. How do we teach that?
Well, it's a good question. And you just do it a little bit by little. And in these conversations, you say, well, we think, sweetheart, that it would be important for you to see about taking more control of your own life. And so here are some possibilities. And so instead of punishing her for the mistake she made, we're going to ask her to implement something positive. So if she's in another situation like that, you'd say, well, all right, well, let's talk about this. And maybe what you could do instead of punish her, you could say, here's what I'd like you to agree to do. I'd like you to agree to set a goal for making your bed a certain number of days this next week. I'd like you to also set a goal on the number of days you'll eat 3 good meals. I'd also like you to set a goal, and you do these one at a time, on when you'll come home, sit yourself in a chair and start your homework. If you could do those things, see, then we'd appreciate that, and we don't need to impose this other stuff.
Yeah. I don't even know how to even respond to that, because it doesn't sound realistic to me with her. With my other two, it totally does. With her, she's always trying to find a way out. There's always an excuse of why she can't do those things.
Right. But see, every time she makes a mistake or fumbles, we're going to meet with her and talk to her. She's 14.
Yeah.
Parents have authority. They have all of the resources. And we can say it. If she says, I don't want to talk to you, you say, well, okay. And then the next time she wants to go with her friends, you say, well, as soon as we talk. And then if she wants to go somewhere or some money or something else, you say, well, okay, as soon as we talk. Now, one last thing. In my experience as a family psychologist, this situation, see, we really ought to find a way to get some external help. Do you have an ecclesiastical leader you can go to and get some references? This girl needs some help right away.
Yes, I know. But if she's not willing to go, and like we've even said, if this isn't the right person, then we'll find somewhere else. But the issue we have with asking,
you go, you find somebody and you go.
But there's such a long wait list. There's hardly anyone available right away. That's what's so hard.
All right. Okay, it's time for me to end this session. Thank you for your conversation today. Thanks for your questions. I appreciate the concern you have as a mother. And so if you could take away anything from our conversation, would you pick out an idea or two that you could emphasize for those who listen?
I think I need to listen more and not blame as quickly and give consequences as quickly. I just need to be better at listening and letting her kind of be able to kind of self-punish herself, because I think that's going to be more impactful than these consequences that she already doesn't accept from me personally.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. You're very, very observant. Appreciate it. And I appreciate your time. And I hope the listeners appreciate. And if those who listen, you have opportunity to want to participate in this program, please let us know. You can contact us on our podcast site. And thank you. Thank you again.
Thank you.
If you're interested in having a conversation with Dr. Scoresby about your teenager and having it used on our podcast for the benefit of other parents who might be facing something similar, please contact us on mattersmostmedia.org or message Do What Matters Most on Facebook. Thank you for listening to this episode of Do What Matters Most, which is sponsored by firstanswers.com, where you can find new tools for families and parents of 21st century kids with a focus on emotional self-reliance. Visit firstanswers.com to sign up for a free newsletter. Find Do What Matters Most on Facebook and our website, mattersmostmedia.org, where you can ask Dr. Scoresby your own questions. Remember to subscribe to stay up to date with new episodes. Give us a rating and write a review on the podcast app or Google Podcasts, and let us know what you think about Do What Matters Most.